What do you actually know about prison? Not the movie version with dramatic shower fights and obvious gang tattoos. Not the TV show version where everyone quotes philosophy and plans elaborate escapes. The real version. The one with rules nobody explains but everyone follows. Silent codes that keep you alive or get you hurt. If you've ever been curious about what actually happens behind those walls, the truth is far stranger and more specific than any script. These aren't suggestions, they're survival requirements. Time to learn what Hollywood conveniently left out. For starters, nobody gives you a handbook. You walk through those doors and everyone's watching, evaluating, calculating where you fit in the hierarchy they've already built. The guards process your paperwork, the inmates process you. Studies show that roughly 60% of first week assaults stem from new arrivals breaking rules they didn't know existed. You're taking a test you never studied for, and failing means more than a bad grade. The first rule hits you immediately. Eye contact sounds simple until you realize it's not. You can't stare at the floor like a terrified rabbit, but you also can't lock eyes with the wrong person for more than a second. It's a precise calculation that changes based on who's looking. Old timers get a brief acknowledging glance. Gang members get even less unless they address you first. The guy in the corner everyone avoids? Don't even glance his direction. Prison eye contact operates on the same principle as looking at a solar eclipse. A quick peek is fine. Staring will damage you permanently. You watch the guy who arrived 2 days before you. He's already made three mistakes you can identify. He sat at the wrong table during first meal. He tried to be friendly with a nod to someone who didn't want acknowledgement. He stood too close to someone's bunk while walking past. Nobody's explained this to him either. He's learning through the hard stares and the way conversations stop when he approaches. Give it another day or two before someone decides whether to educate him verbally or physically. Where you sit matters more than you'd think. That empty chair at the table, not actually available. The phone that nobody's using. Someone's got next, and it's not you. The shower stall at the end. Reserved, though you'll never see a sign. Yet every physical space in prison operates like a parking garage, where all the spots are assigned but none are labeled. Park in the wrong place and you don't get a ticket. You get a conversation you don't want to have. Former inmates consistently report that the hardest adjustment isn't the lack of freedom. It's learning a new social operating system that runs on unwritten code. Like moving to a foreign country where everyone speaks the same language, but all the words mean something slightly different. Excuse me might be polite, or it might be a challenge depending on your tone, your timing, and whether you're blocking someone's established path through the common area. You start noticing the patterns. Certain guys always sit in the same spots. Phone time has an invisible rotation. T. Remote control transfers hands according to a schedule you can't see but everyone else knows. Breaking these patterns isn't against the rules. Breaking them is the definition of disrespect, which is the only rule that actually matters. Respect in here is like oxygen outside. You don't think about it until someone starts taking it away. The acknowledgement game trips up more people than anything else. You have to know who to greet and who to ignore. Nod to someone too low in the hierarchy, and you've just aligned yourself. Ignore someone too important, and you've declared yourself an enemy or an idiot. Neither option ends well. Social media has unwritten rules about who likes whose posts. Prison has unwritten rules about who acknowledges whose existence. The difference is that Instagram won't put you in the hospital for a friend request mistake. Then comes the first test, always comes in the first week. Someone asks you something simple. You using that chair? That's your magazine? You got a problem? The question isn't the question. They're checking if you understand the real conversation happening underneath. Your answer, your tone, your body language, they're all being evaluated. Get it right, and you've passed. Get it wrong, and you've just told everyone you're prey. Records from prison intake programs show that inmates who receive formal orientation about unwritten social rules have 40% fewer violent incidents in their first month. Most prisons don't offer that orientation. They figure you'll learn or you won't, and either way, the problem resolves itself. You're basically playing a survival video game where the tutorial was skipped and every enemy is invisible until you trigger their attack pattern. The bunks have their own hierarchy. Top or bottom isn't random, it's determined by factors you're still trying to decode: time served, gang affiliation, respect level, previous conflicts. Take the wrong bunk and you're moving. The polite version involves someone calmly explaining your error. The impolite version involves waking up to a very different conversation. You thought day one was surviving intake processing, the metal detector, the strip search, the walk to your cell. That was the easy part. The real survival started the moment other inmates saw you. You're in a classroom with no teacher, taking an exam that never ends, and the only study guide is watching who bleeds and trying to figure out why. Once you've survived the social minefield of first contact, you discover something worse. Everything in prison is territory, and nothing is actually yours. That empty corner of the day room, someone's spot for the last 3 years. The table near the window, reserved for a specific crew at specific times. The outlet you want to charge your contraband phone, already claimed by someone who'll notice if you use it. Prison property rights make HOA regulations look reasonable by comparison. At least Karen next door puts her passive-aggressive notes in writing. The TV remote is basically the nuclear football. Who controls it, when they control it, and what gets watched follows rules more complex than actual television programming schedules. Studies of prison social dynamics show that roughly 30% of common area conflicts originate from entertainment disputes. Channel changes require consensus from the right people. You don't just grab the remote because nobody's holding it. That's like walking into someone's house and rearranging their furniture because they're currently in another room. Phone access operates on an invisible rotation that would make airline boarding groups seem chaotic. There's an order, always an order. Who goes next isn't based on who's been waiting longest or who needs it most urgently. It's based on who has the social capital to go next. Jump the line and you've just made a statement. Whether you meant to or not doesn't matter. Prison doesn't accept "I didn't know" as a valid defense. Ignorance is just another word for disrespect with extra steps. Then there's the borrowing economy. Nothing is free, ever. That candy bar someone offers you. You just took out a loan with interest rates that would make payday lenders blush. The coffee they shared? You owe them. The magazine they said you could read? Debt. Prison currency runs on favors, and every transaction gets remembered with accountant-level precision. Former inmates report that tracking who owes what to whom becomes more mentally exhausting than the actual time served. Commissary day is when the economy becomes visible. Those who have share with those who don't, but sharing isn't kindness, it's investment. You accept food, hygiene products, or anything else. You've just signed a contract nobody explained. The repayment terms aren't written down. They're enforced through social pressure that escalates quickly if you default. It's like Venmo requests, except instead of getting reminder notifications, you get reminded by someone who knows where you sleep. The favor chains get complex fast. You owe A, who owes B, who owes C, and somehow you end up owing all of them depending on how the debts transfer. Documentary evidence from prison economics researchers shows that informal credit systems in correctional facilities mirror formal banking, complete with debt trading and compound interest. Except when your credit score drops in prison, you can't just refinance. Never take handouts from people you don't know. That generosity has strings attached so thick they're basically ropes. Someone gives you something for nothing. You haven't made a friend. You've made a mistake. The question isn't why they're being nice. The question is what they want in return and when they'll collect. Sometimes immediately. Sometimes 6 months later, when you've forgotten the original transaction and are very confused about why this person now owns a piece of your future. What happens when debts aren't paid? First comes the conversation. Polite but firm. A reminder that you owe, that it's time to settle up, that this is still friendly territory. Most people pay at this stage because the alternative is clear. Second comes the public reminder, done in front of others so everyone knows you're ducking your obligations. Your reputation takes the hit, which in prison is worse than taking an actual hit. Third comes collection, and collection isn't polite anymore. The line between owing someone and disrespecting them is thinner than people realize. Fail to repay what you owe, and you've crossed from economic default into social violation. It's not about the candy bar anymore. It's about you treating someone's generosity like it didn't matter, which means you're treating them like they don't matter, which means you've just made this personal. At that point, the debt stops being financial and becomes existential. Minor disrespect scenarios pop up constantly. Someone cuts in front of you at mail call. Someone uses your soap without asking. Someone sits in what you've started thinking of as your seat. Most of these you let slide, not because you're weak, but because picking every fight would leave you fighting constantly. The trick is knowing which ones you can't let slide. That calculation is different for everyone and depends on about 50 variables you're still learning. Prison creates a respect economy where your social credit score determines everything from where you sit to whether you survive. You can't opt out of this economy. You're already participating whether you know it or not. Every interaction is a transaction. Every transaction affects your standing. Your standing determines your safety. It's capitalism stripped down to its most brutal basics. No money, no lawyers, no customer service department to complain to. Just social calculus that runs 24/7 with permanent consequences. And when someone decides they've been disrespected enough that talking won't fix it, you learn that the economy of respect has a violence exchange rate. Violence in prison doesn't look like movies. No dramatic music, no fair fights, no one-on-one honor duels. When it happens, it's calculated, witnessed by the right people, and over fast. But knowing when violence is necessary versus when it's avoidable is the difference between surviving your sentence and extending it, or not surviving at all. You can lose a fight. You can't lose respect and survive. This is the core calculation every inmate makes daily. Someone disrespects you publicly, you have to respond, not because you're tough, but because not responding tells everyone you're soft. And soft people become targets for everyone's problems, but how you respond matters as much as whether you respond. Fight someone connected and you've just inherited all their enemies. Fight someone weak and you look like a bully, which makes you a target for people who handle bullies. The math is complex and there's no calculator. Walking away is acceptable in specific scenarios. Someone bumps you accidentally. Someone insults you when no one else hears. Someone tests you but backs down when you stand your ground verbally. These situations allow de escalation without losing face. The key is that retreat can't look like fear. It has to look like strategic disinterest, like you chose not to engage, not that you were afraid to engage. The difference is subtle, but everyone watching knows which one they're seeing. Then there's the snitch problem. What counts as snitching has layers. Talking to guards about weather? Fine. Talking to guards about anything happening on the block? Dangerous territory. Testifying in court about something you witnessed? That's a death sentence in some facilities. Protective custody exists for people whose safety can't be guaranteed in general population. Statistics show that roughly 15% of inmates request protective custody at some point. That 15% are labeled as snitches, sex offenders, or too weak to survive. The label sticks forever. Violence, when it does happen, follows rules. It's rarely random rage. Someone decides you need to be corrected, they plan it, they make sure the right people see it, and they execute it efficiently. Research on prison violence indicates that about 70% of assaults involve some degree of premeditation. The spontaneous movie brawl, where two guys just start swinging, that's amateur hour. Professionals wait for the right moment when guards are rotating shifts and witnesses are positioned to see without being able to intervene quickly. Handling your business means taking care of problems yourself according to the code. Being handled means someone else solves you as their problem. The difference determines whether you maintain status or become a cautionary tale. Most people don't want to fight. They want the fight to not be necessary. But sometimes necessity finds you anyway, and in those moments, your options are limited to bad and worse. After months inside, the immediate survival rules become automatic. You don't think about where to sit anymore. You don't wonder about eye contact. Your body has calibrated itself to the correct millisecond duration. The real challenge shifts from learning the rules to not letting the rules consume who you are. Long term survival requires different strategies than short term survival. Routine becomes sanity. Same breakfast time, same workout schedule, same phone call pattern. Studies of long term incarceration effects show that inmates who maintain consistent personal routines have significantly lower rates of mental health deterioration. The routine isn't exciting, it's armor against the psychological erosion of endless identical days. You're not stuck in a routine, you're protecting your mind from the chaos of realizing how many more identical days are coming. Small dignities matter more than big victories. A photo of family you can look at, a book that's actually yours, letters you keep reading. These aren't luxuries. They're lifelines connecting you to the person you were before the walls. Former inmates consistently report that maintaining small personal rituals helps prevent complete institutional identity absorption. The moment you stop caring about these small things is the moment you've been fully processed by the system. Trust is earned microscopically and destroyed instantly. After years, you might develop genuine friendships with a few people, but those friendships exist in a context where betrayal is always possible, and the cost of misplaced trust can be catastrophic. Roughly 40% of inmates report having no one inside they truly trust, even after years of incarceration. That isolation is protective but also corrosive. Mental health struggles get ignored or stigmatized. Showing weakness invites exploitation. Asking for help marks you as vulnerable. The unwritten code says you handle your own demons quietly, or you become someone else's problem to solve, which means that psychological deterioration happens in silence until it explodes in ways that create new problems for everyone. After 3 years, you realize something. Freedom isn't the release date. Freedom is whether you still remember how to think like someone who doesn't live by these rules, whether you can stop calculating every interaction, whether you can trust without measuring the risk, whether the unwritten codes stay inside the walls or follow you out. Most people become the rules. Day after day, choice after choice, until the codes aren't something you follow, but something you are. No dramatic moment marks the transformation, just slow absorption of the operating system you needed to survive. Movies show epic escape plans or redemption arcs. Reality is simpler and bleaker. You survive by learning the unwritten rules perfectly. And surviving perfectly means losing parts of yourself you don't get back. The price of knowing every code is becoming them. That's the rule they never tell you on day one. The walls don't just keep you in, they remake you into something that belongs there.